You know, as an aside, we at Netflix last year did essentially a test between our current Dr. V team, which was local, and one that was in India. Same documents. I won't get into the full details of it, but the result of that was India actually did a better job. And one of the reasons why the automated review, when I looked at it, wasn't cost effective was because I can get such a good price and such a good quality work from an Indian review team that doesn't make sense at this time.
That raises a corollary question. About 15 years ago, in a set of cases we were working on, and this was coding of documents rather than review, but in some ways it's essentially the same thing. We set up 4 teams and gave them the same body of documents. We had the provider's staff. We had outside people engaged by the provider, managed by the provider. Outside people engaged by a law firm, managed by the law firm, and then the law firm's own staff. All code the same documents, and we compared the results. And what we saw was that as you went on that progression, the cost went about like this, and the quality made a nice X.
Does that mean the law firm didn't do so good,
The
George?
law firm cost a lot of money, and they did a really poor job.
Yeah, okay.
Your firm didn't exist.
Don't tell stories like this anymore, George. Sends a bad message.
I know. I'm always full of bad messages. But the question here is, I hear often the assertion that a review for relevance, we'll leave aside privilege, but at least a review for relevance needs to be performed by attorneys. Does it?
Well, it certainly needs to be supervised by attorneys.
Right.
I think the training, what makes for a successful document review, whether it's in India or wherever, is to make sure that you have put together a briefing manual, that you've got a plan, that you have examples, that you work in a very iterative fashion with the team, particularly at the front end, invest the time to make sure that you train it, and then do quality control as you're going through it. If you don't do those things, you're going to have a sloppy review. On the other hand, if you were willing to take the time and put in the workflows and the management steps and the checks, I think you've got an opportunity to do it that way.
I mean, I think it has to be done by attorneys rather than automated review.
Yeah, I mean, just, we'll use paralegals frequently with the appropriate supervision by attorneys.
We hire sometimes teams of contract attorneys who are cheaper than our paralegals, but they're attorneys, and they're guided appropriately.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's really quite a sea change. If you look at the costs of contract attorneys in the last couple of years, in New York, maybe a high of $75 an hour, as opposed to, I've heard of some down as low as $30 an hour in various communities. So I think that
if you want to get scared, ask yourself what $75 an hour buys in Manhattan. It buys a former large law firm partner 14 to 18 years of experience with Ivy League undergraduate and law school degrees. So our colleague tells us. Yeah.
George really is off his meds today.
As a recruiter from New York, I can back that.
I'm wondering where I should
We staff as contract attorneys, NYU, Columbia, Harvard, former big law. $70 an hour, $60 an hour bill rate.
We talked about, at least briefly, the problems that cloud computing poses for electronic discovery, but cloud computing also offers some possibilities for us. Have any of you used cloud computing in a positive fashion with respect to electronic discovery?
I think at the outset we need to define what cloud computing is, because I think there's a variety of different service offerings now that are being considered under the umbrella of cloud computing, but that are very, very different from one another. So, for instance, Netflix, we serve our web pages out of the cloud, but that's very different than somebody who's maybe having data hosted at a third party, which is where you may know exactly where your data is versus using the cloud and servers almost like electricity. So, but to get to your question, we've looked at it. Earlier in the year, we looked at using some hosted solutions for email archiving, and we found two things. We found that the space just hadn't evolved enough yet that we could really feel comfortable with the companies that were making these offerings. And secondly, and kind of related to that, was just we weren't comfortable with the security procedures that we were seeing. Not that they were terrible, just that we weren't comfortable with them. So I think as the space evolves, there'll be opportunity there. But I think that, again, what is it we have to talk about?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you said that, because I think most people that have had data hosted by an e-discovery provider that's then going to be into a review platform, that's kind of the cloud, right? It's sort of a not really a very effective use of the cloud, because essentially you're paying for all of your hosting, and you might even be buying the boxes at whatever e-discovery provider that has them. So it's sort of a way of doing it, but I think the technology is evolving, and it's getting to the point where it can be utility. And that's really what we need to have. If you truly want to have archiving ability or e-discovery ability, you might have to process a gigantic number of documents and then cull them. You might need to have some incredible array of computers at your fingertips. You might need 10 today, but tomorrow you're only going to need 5. You might only need 2. And so unless the cloud computing becomes that kind of a situation where it's an on switch, off switch, where you can actually have it like a utility, where it's always there for you, you just have to decide if you want it. Until it's at that point, I don't think it's going to happen for the e-discovery world necessarily, except in this one area, which is basically you host documents for review, which is, like I said, not really cloud.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I would say I've heard our IT people express security concerns about it. Not sure where we'll go with that.
Out of curiosity, if I may ask everyone, is anyone using cloud sort of archiving, or they're putting all of their data in the cloud? I'm just kind of curious, because I don't see that many people that are doing it. So you guys are doing it?
Actually, our company is, and I was going to ask if, as an employee, when I'm logged in through the cloud to access our proprietary database of all clients and Outlook and Internet, can the company track all of my movements? Basically, is it all our time?
Well, I think most of those programs have logging capability, and you leave footprints. So
It depends. It's very much a function of not what the inherent capabilities of the program, the software might be, but what has been enabled and what hasn't been enabled, and what sort of contractual arrangements have been laid out at the beginning, and then whether they've actually been implemented. So, for example, with the DRM, some of what we do is not on the cloud. We've got a server. We own the server. Most of the DRM website sits on that server. Not in my offices. It's on the other side of the Twin Cities, but I could go over to the building, and I could stand on the other side of the glass wall with a chicken wire in it and look in and see the box that's mine. They won't let me go on the roof and touch it. But then, a large chunk of the data we deal with is Enron email. And we make that downloadable and available to anybody. I talked to the folks who maintain the server for us, when we bought the server, and they said, you'd be crazy to try to build out that server capability to handle this. Instead, it's up on Amazon Web Services.